Hey there, it's John from Living the Music. Today we're going to take a look at one of George Harrison's greatest songs, Within You, Without You, from 1967's seminal album by the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I think this is worth revisiting, especially the lyrics to this, because I think it has a very deep and profound message that we can actually utilize in our lives today, right now, upon reflection in this moment. It can be sort of like accessed, the wisdom that he was getting at here. So you could obviously just listen to the song, but maybe through this video I can support us to really reflect on the profundity that's going on here and the practicality of it, as I said. Now, apparently he wrote this after some conversation with one of his friends, Klaus Voormann, who was a bass player and an artist from Germany. That he was staying in London at the time, and they had some kind of philosophical conversation, as you do, back in early 1967. I wish we had more of it today in 2025, but that's neither here nor there. Luckily, they did have it, and he was stimulated to write the song. He went into one of Klaus's music rooms, so to speak. He found a harmonium, and he came up with this tune, and he got the first part of the lyrics, and then he went back later and finished off the lyrics. I got that information, by the way, going through this book, I, Me, Mine, which is a great resource if you're a big George fan, where he at least briefly and sometimes more elaborately goes through his thought process in writing almost all of his songs. There's a newer edition of this where they've filled in some blanks that were left over when this was published in the 80s. So anyway, getting into it here, I think the first line he came up with at Klaus's house is this original line where he says, "We were talking about the space between us all and the people who hide themselves behind a wall of illusion." So there you can see he's getting at what we might call Indian philosophy or Eastern philosophy, mysticism, whatever you want to call it. He was getting really turned on by these ideas, but he had already gotten into it, I think, in 65, but certainly by early 67, he's deepening his interest, and he's trying to express these ideas that are just kind of like literally blowing his mind. And of course, he's at the same time taking LSD, and that's sort of confirming experientially some of what he's learning in the Indian philosophy. So this idea of an illusion, this wall of illusion that people hide themselves behind, is quite interesting. Now, I can't claim to be an expert in Indian philosophy, although I have been interested in it for many, many, many years. And one of the books that I'll turn you on to here that I'm using partly as a guide for this video is this wonderful book by a guy named Rupert Spira. And you can see it's called Being Aware, I wanted to say awake, Being Aware of Being Aware. Being aware of being aware. It's a little book, but it's one of those reads where virtually every sentence is gold, and you just find yourself taking a moment to really take it in, because it has a lot of depth to it. So this wall of illusion that George is talking about, that Rupert's talking about, that Indian philosophy has been talking about for thousands of years. How can I possibly sum it up in a few sentences? Well, I can only do my best and say that I think the idea is that the true self is consciousness, our awareness, if you will. That phenomenon, that space, that opening, that clearing in which we have our thoughts flowing through it, and you could say also our entire physical experience flows through our consciousness at the same time. All of our perceptions are flowing through our consciousness at the same time. And part of the illusion, which is so alluring, is this idea that what's real is the external world, the world of our senses, the what we can see, what we can measure, what we hear, taste, feel, etc., all what we can kind of like point to and identify and categorize and all that kind of stuff. That would be called an illusion, in the sense that the spiritualists, the Indian gurus and so forth, are telling us that all that stuff is really just temporary, kind of meaningless matter, meaningless, momentary experiences. But really, the deepest reality is our consciousness. And when I say our consciousness, they would probably say we may experience it as if it's personal, as if it's mine, but maybe that's part of the illusion, and really this consciousness is shared among all beings who have access to it. Now, when you get so-called trapped in this illusion of the reality of the external world and the significance of the external world, then you lose sight of who you really are and what life is really about. And then, you become trapped in that game of life of, getting ahead and, trying to make yourself into someone and, all that kind of stuff. Whereas George would say, I think, and Rupert would say, and, like I say, Indian philosophy would say that you're going to be far more happy when you can go inward and realize, I don't have to get better. I don't have to become someone. My ego's self, the whole thing is an illusion. It's all, again, a temporary game that we get caught up in as if it's the only game in town. Whereas if we were to step back and realize we're one with all consciousness, and that our consciousness is our most true self, if you will, there would be an incredible peace and an incredible sense of well-being and freedom. I know that's saying a mouthful, but let's kind of just stay with it and think about the potential of that, and not only the potential veracity of that, but the potential value of that. And again, I think they all would say, don't take our word for it, look for yourself. And they would probably prescribe meditation as one of the greatest pathways to this awareness. But however you get there, it's that's what's important, is that you get there. Now, he goes on to say that these people who hide themselves behind a wall of illusion, they never glimpse the truth, which we've just spoken about, when they pass away. So, as I understand it in the Hindu faith, and I know George was very serious about what he called the art of dying, and this idea that you hopefully could reach a state of a certain kind of enlightenment in your life, so that when you die, you can avoid coming back again, and sort of learning the same lessons over and over. Maybe you come back as some kind of a more advanced being, or I guess the ultimate is to just reside in the universal consciousness and not have to come back on on Earth, or potentially anywhere else that life is. So, he worked very hard apparently to create a centeredness within himself, so that when it was his time to pass, he was able to do it with consciousness and intention, rather than just kind of drifting away. So he's saying, people, it's going to be too late for people, and they're just going to die, and they'll be stuck in their illusion the whole time. He goes on, we were talking about the love we all could share. When we find it, to try our best to hold it there with our love. With our love, we could save the world if they only knew. Wow. So this is quite something. So now he's bringing in a special quality of love, and I'm sure it's beyond romantic love or even brotherly love or any kind of ordinary love, if you will, although all love is wonderful. But the love perhaps that's generated through the ego self is potentially quite limited, just because it's going through the mechanism of the ego. Whereas if we tune into that awareness that we share with each other, that the oneness that we share because of this, you could say, universal awareness, then that's a new profound kind of love that is incredibly special. And I think, again, he probably experienced that many times over through LSD, and perhaps through his meditation as well. Now he goes on, try to realize it's all within yourself. He's really trying to help people here. He's doing art, he's doing music, he's in the pop world, but at the same time he's very sincerely wants to drive home a message that's going to help you and I. No one else can make you change, he says. And to see you're really only very small, and life flows on within you and without you. I love that part. See you're really only very small, and life flows on within you and without you. I think about that line a fair bit. It comes to me at random times during the course of life, and this notion of life flows on within me and without me. And I get it. I think that it flows within me, like within my system, and it flows without me, sort of outside of my system, if you will. But it also, it doesn't even require me, like the me, my body, my ego. Life is going to flow on without that. It doesn't need that. I'm not that. I, as the ego, as the body, am not that special. I'm doing my best here, guys, but I love that. I just love pondering that, and it does give me a feeling of peace when I center myself in that idea. All my drives and the significances that I'm putting on top of the world, and the stories that I'm telling that create the drama of my life. It's fine as long as I remember it's all a drama that's been made up, but it can get quite overwhelming if you forget that. And so this line helps me to remember that, like I say, my particular situation and my particular problems are not really all that significant. The deepest, profoundest reality is that we are this vast infinite consciousness that supposedly it has no beginning and no end, and wow, what a magical place to dwell. All right, now he goes on. We were talking about the love that's gone so cold, and the people who gain the world and lose their soul. They don't know, they can't see. Are you one of them? Oh, George. That's pretty cool. I mean, he's not letting any of us off the hook there. So yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen lots of people, and if not ourselves at times, gain something in the world but lose something within ourselves, lose whatever. Sometimes our dignity, sometimes our sense of integrity, sometimes our sense of peacefulness and freedom. Who knows? He says lose their soul. I think lose touch with. I think what he's getting at is lose touch with our spiritual aspect, which is really our truest self. Are you one of them? And then he says finally, when you've seen beyond yourself, then you may find peace of mind is waiting there. And the time will come when you will see we're all one. And life flows on within you and without you. Wow. Just even having the privilege of reading these words and saying these words, I am once again taken by their incredible power. I mean, to think this was put into a quote unquote pop album in 1967 by a young kid, 24, 25 at the time, or even younger. This is one deep guy. Now, that's not to sanctify George Harrison. He had his demons like anybody else along the way. But I do give him a lot of credit for being a spiritual seeker and for including us in his spiritual journey. Some people give him crap for being preachy at times, especially later in parts of his solo career. But I give him a pass for the most part, because I think, again, he could have written about anything, but he's writing something that he thinks is going to help us. And not just help us like in a momentary way, but help us in the deepest, most profound way possible. Like give us enlightenment, give us true peace of mind. So yeah, when you've seen beyond yourself, then you may find peace of mind is waiting there. So as Rupert Spira talks about, the pathway to that is to kind of train yourself to focus on the fact that you are aware, not so much what you're aware of. See, that's the continual trap. Is we have all these things we're aware of, these thoughts, these feelings, these perceptions, our physical experience. All of these things are content that we're aware of, but then there's the miracle that we are aware. We are aware, and that in itself is enough, really. In fact, it's more than enough. In fact, when you focus on the awareness itself, it kind of designifies a lot of the drama of one's life. So, for example, Spira talks about the analogy of a movie screen. So, you can't project a movie without some kind of a screen. Now, you could do it against a wall or whatever, but that would be the screen. But let's just consider, like in a movie theater, you have the movie screen. It's blank. It's just white or whatever, and then you project the movie onto it, and of course we experience the content of the movie. But you got to have a screen. You got to have a platform so to speak, to project the film onto. So that's like life. Our consciousness is the screen, and then all the experiences and the content of life are like the movie. Now the movie's like, it's very colorful and loud and lots going on, and all this different stories. So yeah, it's very compelling, and that's wonderful. But it can also be, it can become overwhelming. It can become debilitating. It can become draining. Step back. Wow, I'm the screen. I'm the consciousness upon which this movie is playing. Even the movie of my life that I'm experiencing on an everyday basis. I'm the screen, or I say I, but my consciousness is the screen. So then when I focus on that, when I focus on being conscious of my experience, it gives it a different flavor. So let's say I'm being aware of my awareness of anger. It diffuses it fairly quickly in my experience. Whereas if you get consumed by the anger itself, not being aware of the anger, but just the anger itself, and even double down by saying, I am angry. Now you've made it a concept that a theory kind of that you've bought into, so it has even more reality to it. Then you see how you get trapped by that. That's part of the illusion, or it's an example of the illusion. But if we're able to step back and see that the anger is just thoughts and experiences and ideas that are flowing through my awareness. And wow, isn't it interesting that I'm aware of how angry I am? Let me just be with that. Let me just be with being aware of that. And then what happens is that the experience is temporary, and it dissipates. It eventually flows away, and then something else comes in. So I know, probably some of you are longtime meditators, and you may be very, very familiar with this in practice. But I just love it. I just love the ambition of this song, and I love the profound nature of what he's getting at, and the challenge of putting this in a video and articulating it with any level of comprehension. I also enjoy, and I hope you have enjoyed coming on this little journey with me today. So go to the song. I'll put it in the comments below. Give it maybe an extra reflection today. Perhaps pick up this book. But it's as George would say, it's up to us. It's within us. No one else can make you change. and I'm not saying you need to change, and I'm not sure George is saying you need to change. But if there is an enlightenment possible beyond what we have, it's up to us to find a way to access that. So again, I just hope I've been some small measure of support, and if nothing else, highlighted this incredible song and this incredible man and songwriter, George Harrison. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please subscribe to my channel. Again, I'd love to hear your comments below. Please like the video. We'll see you next time. Take care.